Welcome back to Footnotes and Folly, and to the close of Herodotus' third book. I am Pemberton, this is part 18. Demos reaches home, the Persian scouts limp back. Then a small kindness comes due. Years ago, when Darius was a nobody in Egypt, a Samian named Syloson gave him the very cloak off his back, and now the King of Kings repays a cloak with an army, and the bloody reconquest of Samos. And last, the great set piece Babylon revolts, so sure of its walls that the men strangle their own women to spare the food, and defies Darius for a year and a half, until Zopyrus does a thing that even Herodotus can scarcely believe, to a man's own body, for a king. Let us finish the book.
After Democedes healed King Darius, he had a very great house in Susa, and had been made a table companion of the king. Except for the one thing he wanted, returning to the land of the Hellenes, he had everything. First, when the Egyptian physicians who had tried to heal the king before him were about to be impaled because they had proved inferior to a Hellenic physician, Democedes asked the king to spare their lives and rescued them from death. Second, he rescued an Elean prophet who had accompanied Polycrates and had remained unnoticed among the slaves. In short, Democedes stood very high in the king's favor. Not long afterward, another thing happened. Atessa, the daughter of Cyrus and wife of Darius, had a tumor on her breast. Later it burst and began to spread farther. As long as it was not large, she hid it and told no one because she was ashamed. But afterward, when she was in a bad condition, she sent for Democedes and showed it to him. He said that he would make her well, and he made her swear that in return she would surely do whatever he asked of her. He said he would ask for nothing shameful. O king, although you have such great power, you sit still and do not win any additional nation or power for the Persians. Yet it is reasonable that a man who is both young and master of much wealth should be seen performing some great deed, so that the Persians may know for certain that the man who rules them is truly a man. It is useful for you to do this in two ways. First, so the Persians may know that their ruler is a man, and second, so they may be worn down by war and have no leisure to plot against you. Now, while you are still young, you could display some great deed, for as the body grows, the spirit grows old with it and becomes dulled for every kind of action. Atessa spoke in this way because Democedes had instructed her. Darius answered that she had said everything he himself had in mind to do. He said he had made a plan to yoke together a bridge from one continent to the other and make an expedition against the Scythians, and that these designs would soon be on the way to fulfillment. Atessa told him to hold back from going first against the Scythians, because they would be in his power whenever he wished. Instead, she begged him to make an expedition against Hellas. She said she wished to have Lacedaemonian, Argive, Athenian, and Corinthian women as attendants, because she had heard reports of them. She added that he had the man best fitted of all men, to show him everything concerning Hellas, and to be his guide, meaning the man who had healed his foot. Darius answered that since it seemed good to her that they should first make trial of Hellas, he thought it better to send some Persians there first together with the man she mentioned, to investigate. When these men had learned and seen everything, they could report each matter to him. Then he would attack with full knowledge of all. Darius spoke in this way and then acted as he had said. As soon as day dawned, he summoned 15 Persians of good reputation and ordered them to pass along the coasts of Hellas in company with Democedes. He told them to take care not to let Democedes escape from them, but to bring him back at all costs. After giving them these commands, he summoned Democedes himself and asked him to act as guide for the whole of Hellas, show it to the Persians, and then return. He told him to take all his movable property and carry it as gifts to his father and brothers, saying that he would give him many times as much in its place. Besides this, he said, he would add to the gifts a merchant ship filled with all kinds of goods, which would sail with him. Darius, as it seems to me, promised these things with no crafty design. But Democedes feared that Darius was testing him, so he did not hasten to accept everything offered. He said he would leave his own things where they were, so that he might have them when he came back, but he accepted the merchant ship that Darius promised him for presents to his brothers. After giving his commands to Democedes also, Darius sent them away to the sea. They went down to Phoenicia, and in Phoenicia to the city of Sidon, where they immediately manned 2 triremes and also filled a large cargo ship with all kinds of goods. When they had made everything ready, they sailed for Hellas. Touching at various places, they saw the coastal regions and wrote down a description of them, until at last, after seeing most of the famous places, they came to Taurus in Italy. There, to please Democedes, Aristophanes, the king of the Tarentines, unfastened and removed the steering oars of the Median ships. He also confined the Persians in prison, alleging that they had come as spies. While they were being treated in this way, Democedes went away and reached Croton. When he had arrived at his own native place, Aristophanes set the Persians free and gave back the parts of their ships that he had taken away. Men of Croton, take care what you are doing. You are rescuing a man who was a slave of King Darius and who ran away from him. How do you think King Darius will be content to receive such an insult? How will this deed turn out well for you if you take him away from us? Against what city do you think we shall make an expedition sooner than against this one, and what city before this shall we try to reduce to slavery? The Persians sailed from Taurus in pursuit of Democedes and reached Croton. Finding him in the marketplace, they laid hands on him. Some of the men of Croton, fearing Persian power, were willing to let him go, but others seized him back and struck at the Persians with their staves. The Persians pleaded with them, but they did not persuade the men of Croton. Democedes was rescued from them, and the cargo ship they had brought with them was taken away. So they set sail to return to Asia. Since they had now lost their guide, they made no attempt to visit or learn about any more parts of Hellas. Democedes, however, gave them this message as they were putting out to sea. He told them to say to Darius that Democedes was betrothed to the daughter of Milon. The wrestler Milon had a great name at the king's court, and I suppose Democedes was eager for this marriage, spending much money to promote it, so that Darius might see that he was held in honor in his own country as well. After the Persians put out from Croton, they were shipwrecked with their vessels in Iapygia. While they were remaining there as slaves, Gillos, an exile from Taurus, rescued them and brought them back to King Darius. In return for this, Darius offered to give him whatever he wished. Gillos chose the power to return to Taurus, first telling the story of his misfortune. In order not to disturb all Hellas, as would happen if a great armament sailed to invade Italy for his sake, he said it was enough for him that the men of Cnidos alone should bring him back, with no others, because he supposed that by means of them, since they were friends with the Tarentines, his return from exile would most easily be accomplished. Darius promised and then proceeded to act. He sent a message to Cnidos, and ordered them to bring Gillos back to Taurus. The men of Cnidos obeyed Darius, but nevertheless they did not persuade the Tarentines, and they were not strong enough to use force. Thus these things happened. These were the first Persians who came from Asia to Hellas, and they were sent as spies for the reason already mentioned. After this, King Darius took Samos before all other cities, whether Hellenic or barbarian, for the following reason. When Cambyses the son of Cyrus was marching against Egypt, many Hellenes came to Egypt, some, as one would expect, joining the campaign for profit, and others coming to see the land itself. Among them was Syloson the son of Aix, brother of Polycrates, an exile from Samos. Fortunate chance happened to Syloson. He had taken and put on a flame-colored mantle and was in the marketplace at Memphis. Darius, who at that time was one of the spearmen of Cambyses and was not yet held in any great esteem, saw him, desired the mantle, went up to him, and offered to buy it. Syloson, seeing that Darius greatly desired the mantle, said by some divine inspiration that he would not sell it for any sum, but would give it to him for nothing, if, as it seemed, it had to be his at all costs. Darius agreed to this and received the garment. Syloson thought, no doubt, that through simple-minded generosity he had completely lost it. But in time Cambyses died. The 7 Persians rose against the Magian, and of the 7 Darius obtained the kingdom. Syloson heard that the kingdom had come to the man to whom he had once given the garment in Egypt at his request. Accordingly he went up to Susa, sat down at the entrance of the king's palace, and said that he was a benefactor of Darius. The doorkeeper heard this, and reported it to the king. Darius marveled and asked who among the Hellenes was his benefactor, to whom he owed gratitude, since he had held the kingdom only a short time and scarcely any of them had yet come up to his court. Indeed, he might almost say that he owed no debt to any Hellene. Nevertheless, he ordered the man brought in so that he might know what he meant by saying these things. The doorkeeper brought Syloson before him, and when he had been placed in the middle, the interpreters asked who he was and what he had done that made him call himself the king's benefactor. Syloson told the whole story of the mantle, and how he was the man who had given it. Darius answered that Syloson was the most noble of men, because when Darius still had no power, he had given him a gift, small perhaps, but a kindness counted by him as great as if he were now receiving some great thing from someone. Therefore he would give Syloson gold and silver in abundance, so that he might never repent having done a service to Darius the son of Histastes. Syloson replied that he wanted neither gold nor silver, but asked Darius to recover and give him his fatherland, Samos, which now that his brother Polycrates had been slain by Oroites, was possessed by their slave. He asked that this be given to him without bloodshed or enslavement. When Darius heard this, he prepared to send an expedition with Atanes as commander, one of the 7, charging him to accomplish for Syloson everything he had requested. Atanes then went down to the sea coast and began preparing the expedition. Maandrios the son of Maandrios was holding power over Samos, having received the government from Polycrates as a trust. Although he wanted to show himself the most righteous of men, he did not succeed. When the death of Polycrates was reported to him, he first founded an altar to Zeus the Liberator and marked out a sacred enclosure around it, the same one that still exists in the suburb of the city. After doing this, he gathered an assembly of all the citizens and spoke to them. As you know as well as I do, the scepter of Polycrates and all his power have been entrusted to me, and now it is open to me to be a ruler. But as far as I can, I will refrain from doing the very thing for which I find fault with my neighbor. I did not approve of Polycrates acting as master over men who were not inferior to himself, and I do not approve of anyone else who does such things. Polycrates has now fulfilled his appointed destiny, and I now give the power into the hands of the people and proclaim equality for you. However, I think it right that these privileges be assigned to me. From the wealth of Polycrates, 6 talents should be taken out and given to me as a special gift, and in addition, I choose for myself and for my descendants after me the priesthood of Zeus the Liberator, to whom I myself founded a temple, while I bestow liberty on you. These were the offers Maandrios made to the Samians. But one of them, a man of reputation among the citizens whose name was Telesarchos, rose and said that Maandrios was unworthy to be their ruler, since he was of mean birth, and a pestilent fellow besides. Rather, he should take care to give an account of the money he had managed. When Maandrios realized that if he gave up power some other man would be set up as despot in his place, he did not keep at all to his intention of resigning. Instead, he withdrew to the fortress and sent for each man separately, pretending that he was going to give an account of the money. In this way he seized them and put them in chains. They had been put in chains when Maandrios afterward was overtaken by sickness. His brother, whose name was like Herodotus, expected him to die and put all the prisoners to death, so that he himself might more easily gain possession of power over Samos. All this happened because, as it appears, they did not choose to be free. When the Persians arrived at Samos, bringing Syloson home from exile, no one raised a hand against them. Moreover, the party of Maandrios, and Maandrios himself, said they were ready to withdraw from the island under a truce. Athens agreed to these terms and made a treaty. The most honorable of the Persians then had seats placed for them in front of the fortress and were sitting there. Now the despot Maandrios had a brother who was somewhat mad, and his name was Charilaus. Because of some offense he had committed, this man had been confined in an underground dungeon. At this time, when he heard what was being done, he pushed his head out from the dungeon, and when he saw the Persians sitting there peacefully, he began to cry out, saying that he wanted to speak with Maandrios. When Maandrios heard his voice, he ordered them to release him and bring him into his presence. As soon as Charilaus was brought in, he began abusing and reviling him, trying to persuade him to attack the Persians. "You basest of men, did you put me in chains and judge me worthy of an underground dungeon, even though I am your own brother and did no wrong worthy of chains? And now, when you see the Persians casting you out of the land and making you homeless, do you not dare to take any revenge, though they are so exceedingly easy to overcome? No, if you are truly afraid of them, give me your mercenaries, and I will take vengeance on them for coming here, and I am willing to let you yourself go out of the island." So spoke Charilaus, and Maandrios accepted what he said. I do not think he did this because he had reached such a height of folly as to suppose that his own power could overcome the power of the king, but rather because he grudged Syloson receiving the state from him without trouble, and with no harm done to it. Therefore he wanted to provoke the Persians to anger and make the power of Samos as weak as possible before handing it over, being well assured that if the Persians suffered harm, they would likely be bitter against the Samians as well as against those who had done the wrong. He also knew that he had a safe escape from the island whenever he wished, for he had had a secret underground passage made, leading from the fortress to the sea. Maandrios himself then sailed out from Samos, but Charilaus armed all the mercenaries, threw the gates wide open, and sent them out against the Persians. The Persians were expecting no such thing, but supposed that everything had been arranged. The mercenaries fell on them and began killing those Persians who had seats carried for them and were of the highest rank. While this was happening, the rest of the Persian force came to the rescue, and the mercenaries were hard-pressed and forced to withdraw into the fortress. Then Atenes, the Persian commander, saw that the Persians had suffered greatly. He deliberately forgot the orders Darius had given him when he sent him out, not to kill any Samian or sell any into slavery, but to restore the island to Syloson free from all suffering and disaster. Atenes deliberately forgot these commands and gave the word to his army to kill every person they took, man or boy, without distinction. So while part of the army besieged the fortress, the others killed everyone who came in their way, whether in sanctuary or outside sanctuary. Meanwhile Maandrios had escaped from Samos and was sailing to Lacedaemon. When he came there, and had the things he brought with him on his departure carried up to the city, he acted as follows. First he would set out his silver and gold cups, and while his servants were cleaning them, he would be in conversation with Cleomenes the son of Anaxandrides, then king of Sparta, and would bring him unto his house. When Cleomenes saw the cups, he marveled and was astonished at them, and Maandrios would tell him to take away as many as he pleased. Maandrios said this 2 or 3 times, but in this Cleomenes showed himself the most upright of men. Not only did he not think it right to take what was offered, but he perceived that Maandrios would make gifts to other citizens and so obtain assistance for himself. He went to the ephors and said that it would be better for Sparta if the stranger from Samos departed from Peloponnesus, in case he persuaded either Cleomenes himself or some other Spartan to act basely. They accepted his counsel and expelled Maandrios by proclamation. As for Samos, the Persians swept the population off it and delivered it to Syloson stripped of men. Afterward, however, the commander Atenes even helped settle people there, moved by a dream vision and by a disease that seized him in the genital organs. After a naval force had thus gone against Samos, the Babylonians revolted, being exceedingly well prepared. During the whole time of the reign of the Magi and the rising of the Seven, amid all the time and its accompanying confusion, they had been preparing themselves for the siege of their city, and it somehow happened that they were not observed doing this. When they openly revolted, they acted as follows. First each man set apart his mother, and then each man set apart for himself one woman, whichever he wished from his own household. All the rest they gathered together and killed by suffocation. Each man set apart the woman already mentioned to serve as a maker of bread, and they suffocated the rest so that they would not consume the provisions. When Darius was informed of this, he gathered all his power and made an expedition against them. After marching his army up to Babylon, he began to besiege them. But the Babylonians cared nothing for the siege. They used to go up to the battlements of the wall and show contempt for Darius and his army by gestures and words. One of them uttered this saying, "Why, O Persians, do you remain sitting here and not depart? You will capture us only when mules give birth." A Babylonian said this because he did not suppose that a mule would ever give birth. When 1 year and 7 months had passed, Darius and his whole army began to be vexed because they could not conquer the Babylonians. Darius had used every kind of device and every possible means against them, but even so he could not conquer them. Among other devices he had also tried the method by which Cyrus had conquered them, but the Babylonians were terribly on their guard, and he was not able to take them. Then, in the 20th month, a prodigy happened to Zopyrus, the son of that Megabizos who had been one of the 7 men who slew the Magian. One of the mules that carried his provisions gave birth. When this was reported to him, Zopyrus did not believe the report and saw the foal for himself. Then he charged those who had seen it not to tell anyone what had happened, and he considered with himself what to do. Thinking of the words spoken by the Babylonian at the beginning, that the wall would be taken when mules gave birth, this ominous saying made Zopyrus think that Babylon could be taken, for he believed that both the man had spoken and his mule had given birth by divine dispensation. Since it seemed to him that Babylon was now fated to be captured, he went to Darius and asked whether he thought it a matter of very great importance to conquer Babylon. When Darius answered that he considered it of great consequence, Zopyrus thought again how he might be the man to take it, and how the deed might be his own. Among the Persians, benefits are counted worthy of a very high degree of honor. He therefore concluded that he could not conquer it by any other means except by mutilating himself and deserting to the Babylonians. So, making little account of himself, he mutilated his own body in a way that could not be healed. He cut off his nose and ears, shaved his hair around in a shameful way, scourged himself, and then went into the presence of Darius. Darius was exceedingly troubled when he saw the man of greatest reputation with him mutilated in this way. He leapt up from his seat, cried out loudly, and asked who had mutilated him and for what deed. Zopyrus replied that no such man existed, except Darius himself, who had power enough to bring him into this condition. No stranger, O king, had done this to him. He had done it himself to himself, because he thought it a very grievous thing that the Assyrians should make a mockery of the Persians. Most reckless of men, you have given the fairest name to the foulest deed when you say that because of those who are besieged you brought yourself into a condition that cannot be cured. How, you senseless man, will the enemy surrender to us more quickly because you have mutilated yourself? Surely you wandered out of your senses in destroying yourself like this. If I had told you what I was about to do, you would not have allowed me to do it, but as it was, I did it on my own account. Now therefore, unless something is lacking on your part, we shall conquer Babylon. I shall go at once as a deserter to the wall, and I shall tell them that I suffered this treatment at your hands. I think that when I have convinced them this is so, I shall obtain command of part of their forces. Then, on the 10th day from the day when I enter within the wall, take 1,000 of those troops whose loss will cause you no concern, and set them by the gate of the city called the Gate of Semiramis. After that, on the 7th day after the 10th, set 2,000, I pray you, by the gate called the Gate of the Ninevites. After that 7th day, let 20 days pass, and then lead another 4,000 and place them by the gate called the Gate of the Chaldeans. Let neither the earlier men nor these have any weapons to defend themselves except daggers, but let them have that weapon. Then, after the 20th day, immediately order the rest of the army to attack the wall all around, and set the Persians, I pray you, by the gates called the Gate of Belos and the Gate of Kisha. For as I think, when I have displayed great deeds of courage, the Babylonians will entrust to me, along with their other affairs, the keys that draw the bolts of the gates. After that, it will be the care of myself and the Persians to do what ought to be done. After giving these instructions, Zopyrus went toward the gate of the city, turning to look behind him as he went, as if he truly were a deserter. The men posted on that part of the wall saw him from the towers, ran down, opened one wing of the gate a little, and asked who he was and why he had come. He told them that he was Zopyrus, and that he had come to them as a deserter. When the gatekeepers heard this, they led him to the public assembly of the Babylonians. Once brought before it, he began to lament his fortunes. He said that he had in fact suffered at his own hands, and that he had suffered this because he had advised the king to withdraw his army, since there truly seemed to be no way to take the city. And now I have come for very great good to you, O Babylonians, but for very great evil to Darius and his army and the Persians. He surely shall not escape without punishment for having mutilated me in this way, and I know all the courses of his counsels. Thus he spoke. The Babylonians saw a man of the highest reputation among the Persians deprived of his nose and ears and smeared with blood from scourging. Believing firmly that he was telling the truth and had come to be their helper, they were ready to put in his power whatever he asked of them. He asked to command a certain force. When he had obtained this from them, he did what he had agreed with Darius that he would do. On the 10th day he led out the army of the Babylonians, surrounded the 1,000 men whom he had instructed Darius to set there first, and killed them. The Babylonians, seeing that the deeds he displayed matched his words, rejoiced greatly and were ready to serve him in everything. After the agreed number of days had passed, he again chose men of the Babylonians, led them out, and killed 2,000 of Darius' troops. Seeing this deed also, all the Babylonians had the name of Zopyrus on their tongues and praised him loudly. Then once more, after the agreed number of days had passed, he led them out to the appointed place, surrounded the 4,000, and killed them. When this too had been done, Zopyrus was everything among the Babylonians, and he was appointed both commander of their army and guardian of their walls. But when Darius attacked every side of the wall according to the agreement, then Zopyrus revealed all his craft. While the Babylonians had gone up onto the wall and were defending themselves against the assaults of Darius' army, Zopyrus opened the gates called the gates of Kisha and of Belos and let the Persians inside the wall. Those Babylonians who saw what had been done fled to the temple of Zeus Belos, while those who did not see it remained each in his appointed place, until at last they too learned that they had been betrayed. Thus Babylon was conquered for the second time. After Darius had overcome the Babylonians, he first took away the wall around their city and pulled down all the gates, for when Cyrus had taken Babylon before him, he had done neither of these things. Second, Darius impaled about 3,000 of the leading men, but to the rest of the Babylonians he gave back their city to live in. To provide that the Babylonians should have wives, so that their race might be continued, Darius did the following, because, as has been said at the beginning, the Babylonians had suffocated their own wives in careful concern for their supply of food. He ordered the nations living around them to bring women to Babylon, fixing a certain number for each nation, so that a total of 50,000 women was gathered together. From these women the present Babylonians are descended. As for Zopyrus, in the judgment of Darius no Persian surpassed him in good service, either among those who came later or those who had gone before, except Cyrus alone, for no Persian ever yet ventured to compare himself with Cyrus. Darius is said to have declared often that he would rather have Zopyrus free from injury than have 20 Babylons added to his possession in addition to the one he already had. Moreover, he gave him great honors. Not only did he give him every year the things counted most honorable among the Persians, but he also granted him Babylon to rule free from tribute as long as he lived, and he added many other gifts. The son of this Zopyrus was Megabyzos, who was made commander in Egypt against the Athenians and their allies. The son of this Megabyzos was Zopyrus, who went over to Athens as a deserter from the Persians.
And their book 3 ends Babylon taken a second time by the most appalling loyalty in history, its gates thrown open by a man who cut off his own nose and ears to be believed. Darius sits secure now, from the Aegean to the Indus, the empire ordered and the rebels broken. But a restless king does not sit long, and in Book 4 he will turn his enormous army north, into the cold and trackless land of the Scythians, who have a surprise for him. Thank you for sitting with the whole of Thaleia. Mind the footnotes, and beware the folly.